Hello, all my little weirdos, and welcome back to Serial Killer Saturdays, where each week I bring you the gruesome details and facts on one of the many famous serial killers on the planet. This week I am bringing you all to Plainfield, Wisconsin. We are going back to the 1950s when these cheeseheads got their socks rocked off because one of their own brought hundreds of looky-loo tourists and put them in the spotlight in a gruesome way. Let me introduce to you the infamous Mama's Boy, the Butcher of Plainfield, Mr. Ed Gein. Now, let me preface by saying that my next statement does not in any way, shape, or form condone or encourage what Ed Gein did, but I really can't help but to feel sorry for the guy. He was set up for failure the second he was born into the Gein family. And to defend my statement, let me tell you a little about his ma and pa. George and Augusta Gein were both first-generation American children of German immigrants, and they were both born and raised in Wisconsin. They married in the year 1900, welcomed their first boy, Henry, in 1902, then their second and last boy, Ed, in 1906. George was a man with many demons, but instead of facing those monsters, he washed them down with whiskey. He wasn't able to hold a steady job, and through time, his alcoholism got worse, sending him into fits of rage where he would beat up on Augusta and their two boys. And just when you think that's bad enough, here is Augusta, who is not like many of the traditional wives in the 1950s. She was a no-nonsense kind of woman, very German to the core, and took the old Lutheran religion she was raised on very seriously. At a young age, Augusta was taught that the world is a nasty, disgusting, sinful place, and she was hell-bent on instilling that into her son's brains. She was known to be domineering and would berate her husband for his drinking habits any chance she could get. When she wasn't verbally abusing her drunk husband, she was drilling her lifestyle into her boys. She taught them that it wasn't just the world that was evil, it was all women, too. All women except her, of course. They were brought up learning that women were instruments of the devil, and she was very strict about them staying on the isolated farm to stay away from corruption and temptation. And I would say Augusta did a pretty good job because it wasn't until her oldest son, Henry, was in his late 30s that he started to rebel against his mother. He came out one day that he was dating a woman who was divorced and had children, and that sent Augusta right off the edge. After that, Henry would go on to basically talk shit about Augusta to Ed and how much of a tyrant she was and how obsessive she was over their lives. He tried to make Ed see the light, see that their mother was not a saint, but that didn't work. All it did was upset Ed, because to Ed, Augusta was the god that walked on water. She could literally do no wrong. And all of this happened in the worst of times because one day after that, the boys were out on the land clearing brush by fire. The fire got a little out of control, and when Ed went, quote-unquote, looking for his brother, Henry was gone. Ed called the cops in, and there was a search, but it was a pretty short search because it seemed that Ed took the search party straight to Henry's body after claiming that he didn't know where he was. And that was red flag number one. Red flag number two is that his body was found face down on the scorched land, but his body was free of burns. And finally, red flag number three is that there were some strange bruising on his head. The coroner deemed it death by the smoke inhalation. However, many people think that Henry was the first victim of Ed Gein. Many believe that Ed was defending his mother's honor and killed his brother for the horrible things he said about her and the rebellion he brought that was straining their mother. The death of her son definitely did some damage on Augusta. She suffered a stroke shortly after and was paralyzed, and she depended on Ed even more than before because she was bedridden. Roughly a year after that, she suffered another stroke, but this one was fatal, and Ed was distraught. He had no idea how to live without his mother, the love of his life. Something inside Ed's mental broke, and he took a tumble down a dark and twisted path. He desperately wanted his mother back, which he actually did try to do shortly after she was buried. He was unsuccessful in exhuming his mother's body, though, because she was buried in a concrete vault. But that wasn't going to stop Gein, because he then decided to dig up the graves of women that resembled his mommy in both age and physical appearance. He would take body parts and make things such as furniture, household items, and mainly he attempted to make a skin suit that would physically bring his mother back. When the already dead bodies weren't cutting it for Ed anymore, he struggled with dark thoughts of needing something more. And he eventually found that something at the local tavern that he frequented, the owner, Mary Hogan. Mary resembled his mother, and her body was fresher than the dead corpses he was digging up. Although this murder is said to not be premeditated, his intrusive thoughts won, and he shot and killed Mary in her bar and took her body home. Her body was dismembered and mutilated, and her head was later found in his home by authorities. And some of the rest of her was found throughout the house in the furniture and the skin suit that he made. Mary was only 51 years old when her life got taken in 1954. It wasn't until 1957 that Ed's intrusive thoughts won again, claiming Bernice Warden as his next and final victim. Bernice was a widow who ran the local hardware store that her late husband originally founded. Ed was an odd jobs around the town kind of guy, so he frequented the hardware store and Bernice quite often. And just like his first victim, Bernice resembled Ed's mother and unlocked the monster inside him once again. He shot and killed Bernice in her store with a rifle and took her body home to do his weirdo arts and crafts. And her son, Frank, was a deputy sheriff in Plainfield at the time. And when he found his mother missing and blood sprayed all over her store, he wasted no time. He automatically remembered Ed Gein coming in the day before and ordering some antifreeze and telling Bernice he'll be by the next day to get it. So lo and behold, the last sales receipt in the hardware store was found to be made out to Ed. A search party was rounded up to the Gein property, where Bernice's body was found mutilated and hung upside down, gutted like a deer. Ed was found guilty for the murder of Bernice Warden, but was declared insane, so he spent the rest of his life in the mental institute. He was interviewed by doctors and psychiatrists, and it was said more than once that he did not seem to comprehend the horror that his actions caused. He was not tried for the murder of Mary Hogan, though, simply because he was already deemed insane, already going to be spending the rest of his life locked away in an institute, and it was said to be just a waste of money to prosecute him, which I think that sucks for Mary's family because her spirit should have been given her day in court, and justice should have been served on her behalf as well. Ed Gein passed away in 1984 at the age of 77 due to heart failure. He was in the Mendota Mental Institute in Madison, Wisconsin. Although there has been some argument, Ed is classified as one of the most prolific serial killers in history. The fame that followed these murders is unbelievable. Ed Gein and his real-life horror show that he didn't see anything wrong with was the inspiration behind some of the most iconic horror characters. He inspired the character Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. So that is the wild horror ride through the life and crimes of Ed Gein. If you have any other serial killers you would like for me to do an episode on, drop a comment below, and until next time, bye!